That's the nature of denial. You don't just say, yeah, I became one today. You acknowledge the totality of your own story, and you can see it without the denial, and you could just see it from day one. I'm not one of those guys that drank socially and then crossed the line. I was born on the other side of the line. I drank socially about 10 minutes, and then boom, and I never had control. I had no idea what was going to happen when I drank. I remember hearing a guy one time, he bought a bottle of whiskey and he took it back the next day, and he went back to the liquor store and he said, I don't want any more of that whiskey you sold me yesterday. What box did it come out of? I got in a lot of trouble. He said, I bought some whiskey in here about a month ago, and I drank it, and I didn't do anything wrong. My wife just appreciated me so much. I behaved myself entirely through the whole evening, and I want to know if you have any more of that available. In other words, when we picked up the first drink, it was, I wonder where I'm going. I wonder what's going to happen tonight. But it was worth it because we knew that something really was going to happen tonight. And it wasn't going to be, I sat there going, oh, nothing going on, nothing going on. So when people said, well, let's leave this bar and go to another bar, I'd go, why? Well, nothing's happening here. Let's have 10 more drinks. It'll be happening, man. You don't have to leave at all. The cops will be here. There'll be shit going on. You don't have to travel. Just drink more. And I think we had the idea that when we went to the next bar, it was better. It was that we had the 10 drinks over there. And so I started drinking just like everybody who has already spoken. I didn't like the world. I didn't like what was going on inside of me ever since I was a little kid. I just didn't see it right. I just saw it as a very hard place. I never belonged. I had all the proper upbringing, wonderful parents, a wonderful sister. She's got 35 years in AA now. Wonderful woman, Sue. I went to church. I paid attention. I was, head of the Connecticut Catholic Youth Organization. Have my picture in the paper. Look at this upstanding young man. But when I sat in church, I said, everybody else God likes, but He doesn't like me. Nobody told me that. I just sat there and figured it out. I just saw things differently. I heard the Latin and I said, oh, they're talking behind my back. They're plotting on me. And my sister thought it was beautiful. And then they'd spray the incense and shake those things and come up and down in the robes and all that. And I just was like, man, I'm getting nervous just watching this whole thing. Because I knew what it was leading up to. It was leading up to the crucifixion. Which if you look at it from where I looked at it, did not look like the coolest thing. And what I got out of it, looking at that cross hanging, it was right there. You couldn't miss it. It was just there. It was, this is what I did to my only son that I loved. Guess what I'm going to do to you, little one? My sister saw the true meaning of all of that, and it made her just feel so loved. I saw it another way. So Clancy talks about alcoholism being a disease of perception. All life is a disease of perception. As a matter of fact, there isn't anything except perception. That's it. And that's why when we come in here, change how we see things. And they do that by getting rid of the way we used to see things. So anyway, I had polio as a kid. And it was a real scary thing, mostly for the parents, because they just took all the kids and put them in isolation. And even though some of the other kids were, some of them died and there was this going on, I remember there was sort of a spirit in there that, well, we're all in this together and we're goofing around and doing things you're not supposed to. And this wonderful nun named Sister Kenny came up with this treatment, and about 20% really benefited from it, so that I got this arm, I couldn't move at all, and I got 90% of the use back, and the same with the leg. And so when I came out of there, I remember the gratitude that I had for looking at flowers running around in the field, because it had been taken away for 6 or 8 months. And that was the first gratitude I ever felt. And of course, the reason I felt it was taken away. And then it was given back. And when it was taken away, I never knew I was going to see it again. That experience, of course, is repeated here in Alcoholics Anonymous when we're given our lives back. It's hard for people who haven't experienced dramatic distress to really understand the gratitude that the people who come out of it feel. And that's what we all have in common. AA is almost corners the market on miracles. You know what I mean? I hear about them once in a while. In a church setting, there'll be someone who just is transformed. But in AA, it happens all the time. This room is just filled with one miracle after another. And you say, well, gee, how does AA corner the market on miracles? Have they got a program that is that much more powerful than churches and other spiritual things? No, they don't. What we do, we corner the market on desperate people. That's our sample. And when everyone in your congregation is desperate, you're going to hit a home run every now and then. You really are. Very briefly, I got out of college to join the Marine Corps. The Korean War draft was still going on. I really didn't know much about the military, although World War II was the biggest thing in my childhood, because I was a teenager when a lot of it was going on and when it ended. So I had a very warm place in my heart for the military, but I never thought of myself as becoming a military person. I goofed around too much. If you knew me, you'd go, this is the last guy that's going to join the military. But you were either going to join or they were going to take you. And so 4 or 5 of us had some beer and said, let's join the Marine Corps. And I said, yeah, I'll be right there. Finish the beer. Yeah, we'd love to join. Oh, I do. And of course, it's a rude shock. The process for getting into the Marine Corps is similar to what my sponsor did to me when I was new in AA. But out of that process, and people doing it together and surviving, for example, flight school, I think they plan on washing out something like 65%, maybe 70%. So you knew when you started that people are going to be dropping. And then when you finish and you end up in a squadron, you just feel like you are part of something. And all these guys had the same thing in common, and I just loved it. So I decided I would make it a career. And I signed up for a regular commission and got one. They weren't handing them out that much then, but I got one, and so now I'm assured to stay for 20 or 30 years. I had gotten married, and in 8 years we had 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls. I got transferred around to wonderful, interesting duty stations, flying in fighter squadrons and photo squadrons. I was a forward air controller out at Camp Pendleton. I was a flight instructor. I mean, you just go through, it was just like, wow, this is really cool. And all the Marine bases, they got the golf courses, the officers club, and a lot of them are on the water. You could have boats, and just, you know, you'd look and you just go, isn't this wonderful? But that wasn't what was going on. What was going on inside of me. And I wasn't enjoying this at all. I was starting to rely so much on alcohol that I had to lie all the time. I know I was supposed to come home. I told you I'd be home at 8 o'clock. But the guys wanted to hang around, and I didn't want to disappoint them, so it's 2 a.m. and here I am again. And then the arguments would start, and I could see the kids look. As the kids hate to watch their parents locked in mortal combat, yelling at each other, and one of them storming out and all that. So I just, after you get sober, you really get a chance to reenact that in your head. And sometimes your kids will be brutally honest with you and tell you what it really felt like. But the main thing that was happening was I couldn't control drinking. I was now forced to keep it in the car and to just lie about anything to make sure that I could keep on drinking. The one thing I didn't do was bring alcohol in the airplane, which, as it turns out, my friend Hal Marley, who's passed away now, but he was my buddy when I first got sober, and he was an Air Force pilot. And I told him, I said, I started suffering from withdrawals in the plane. I would be shaking and all that. And he said, well, that's because you didn't bring any alcohol with you in the airplane. And he said, I started into that, and I just took a little flask up, and he was describing how successful his plan for flying jet airplanes was. But as successful as it was, he also ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous and lost his Air Force career. Well, he didn't lose the whole career, but they made him leave. I almost jumped out of airplanes about 5 times. I thought I was going to have to eject because I couldn't stay in the seat. I couldn't stand how I felt. I had to leave. I don't know if you've ever had that happen. I had it happen getting a haircut a couple times. I just said, I have to leave now. And the guy said, well, I'm not through. Yes, you are. I have to go now. I didn't have anywhere to go. I just couldn't stay there any longer. I had to leave. It was almost like I had to get out of my own skin. And this was happening as I was flying around. And eventually I said to the commanding officer of my fighter squadron, photo squadron, that I'm not going to fly anymore. And he said, what do you mean you're not going to fly? You've been flying for 14 years. It's your whole life. I said, I'm not going to fly anymore. And I wouldn't tell him why. And he said, well, if you insist on that, I'm going to have to contact Headquarters Marine Corps and tell them to give you a new assignment. And I said, okay. And I waited 3 months. It was an agonizing 3 months. I felt so ashamed with those other pilots. And I get my orders to Air Traffic Control School. I'm going to become an air traffic controller. So you can see there was no alcohol programs going on in the Navy at that time. So that the proper place to send someone who's drinking so much he can't fly